part of the project Likkutei Sichos, and it's Parshas Vayeshev, and it's a Chanukah Sichah. It's interesting. This week, usually we have two Sichos, but this week, I guess with the project, it's only one. So let's begin. Vayeshev Dal Chanukah Aleph. In Pirish from Pasuk V'Habor Reik Ein Bo Yimayim. This week's Parsha, that it says about the pit that they threw Yosef in, the brothers threw Yosef in. So the Pasuk says V'Habor Reik, that the pit was empty. Ein Bo Yimayim, there was no water there. So Gefitman in Gemara, we find in the Gemara in Shabbos, the Avchof Beis, the Gemara says that in the sugya from Chanukah, this is the sugya of Chanukah. So the Gemara says, "Va'amar Rav Kana Darsh Rav Nosson Bar Minyomi Mishmeid Rav Tanchum." Rav Kana darshans. Rav Kana says that Darsh Rav Nosson Bar Minyomi, he darshaned in the name of Rabbi Tanchum. My diksiv, he says, what's this pasuk? What does it mean? V'habor reik ein bo yimayim. What does it mean that the pit was empty and there was no water? Obviously, mimashma shenemar v'habor reik ein desh ein bo yimayim. If the Torah says that the pit was empty, so why does the Torah have to say and there was no water there? It's obvious. Elamat tamalemer ein bo yimayim. So why does the Torah say there was no water? Mayim ein bo, to tell us that there was no water there. Av nechoshav hakrabim yesh bo, where there were snakes and scorpions in the pit. That's what the Gemara says. But Parshas is thus what the Gemara brings the drasha if Habor Reik Gamer. This that the Gemara in the Sugi of Chanukah brings, Sugi of the Chanukah, brings this whole drasha of Habor Reik Im Mayim in the Sugi of Chanukah. The far while the drasha is gesagt worden von selben an der Omar was hat gesagt die Friedrich ist drasha. Omar of Kana, Dorish of Nosson Bar Minyomi Mishmeid Rav Tanchum Nershel Chanukah. So the Gemara brought down the Memra, which said the halachas of Ner Shel Chanukah, and it's very common in Gemara that once you bring the name and a din of that person, so you'll bring other things that he said, even though it's off topic. So the Parshas, that's the connection. They both said in Darash Rav Nosson Bar Minyomi in the name of Rav Tanchum, aber v'geret shein fil mol in yeder inyan in teira b'tachlis hadik. So the Rabbi says, we spoke about many times, is yeder inyan in teira b'tachlis hadik. Everything is the ultimate precise. Therefore, when the Gemara brings that drasha in a gewisse sugya, when the Gemara brings a drasha in a specific sugya, this is not nur tzlib azaytik inyan, the zelbe bal memra. So it's not only just because it's the same bal memra, so we're going to bring it as well. Nor der far, while the drasha hat teichendike shaychet to the sugya in welche sie werd gebracht. It's because the memra or the halacha that's being said by this man da Amar has a very specific connection and a teichen connection to the sugi that we're discussing. Weiter, therefore it's understood in our concept es is the ashayches and teichen zwischen der memra hanal mit den inyan von Chanukah. So there's a connection between this that we said about Habor Reik and by Mayim to Chanukah. Befrat leiten them was the shalosh steigt in Anei von unser Parsha, especially what the shalosh says. There's not going to be any more. I took them. There's more? Because I took both of them.
The Parshas.
Oh, okay.
Did you post it?
Yeah, I posted it. I posted on the group. You can look on Kedusha. Aber Friday there, them was the Shalosh type in Anei von unser Parsha, especially what the Shalosh says in regards to our Parsha, as the Parshas Vayeshev Miketz, the Shalosh writes clearly that the Parshas of Parshas Vayeshev and Miketz and Vayigash all have a connection to Chanukah. Und der Pasuk V'Habor Reik Ein Bo Yimayim steht doch in Parshas Vayeshev. So the Pasuk of V'Habor Reik Ein Bo Yimayim is said in Parshas Vayeshev. The Shalah tells us the Vayeshev has a special connection to Chanukah. So the Pasuk of V'Habor Reik Ein Bo Yimayim for sure has this connection to Chanukah. Ubefrat that it's in the sugya of Chanukah. Base. Chazal tell us Ein Mayim Elo Teira. Famous thing that when we say water, true water refers only to Teira. Many times in Tanya it's brought down that water comes from, why is Teira compared to water? Because just like water comes from a very high place and goes to a low place, so too Teira comes from a high place and goes to a very low place. So Ein Mayim Elo Teira. Water means, when we say water in Teira, means Teira. The fun is movement is understood as in Teira, when a state Mayim, as is Eich Menam is Eif Teira. So therefore, when the Teira says About mayim, it's alluded to Torah. We're fratin in pasuk v'habor reik ein by mayim, especially when we say v'habor reik, that the pit is empty ein by mayim, there's no water. It's before the Medrash says as da retzich v'egin Torah. The Medrash says that when the pasuk says v'habor reik ein by mayim, it's referring to Torah. Bor reik nisreiken beidah shel Yaakov, which means that the pit of Yaakov was completely empty. Ein by mayim, which means there was no water. Ein by divrei Torah shnimshu l'mayim. So the Medrash says that there was no water, which means there was no Torah there. Und das ist echt der Tam, der Pirish Papnimi, in the Maimer Chazal, mayim ein by aber nechoshem akravim yesh by. And this is also the inner explanation of when we say that there was no water, but there was nechoshem akravim. What does that mean? But as the Medrash bring Beidei Pirushim, the Medrash says both pshatim. The Medrash says number one, mayim ein by aber nechoshem akravim yesh by, and beis ein by mayim ein by divrei Torah. V'hemshech zelazeh. So obviously, the fact of that there was nechoshem akravim there, and we're saying that there was no divrei Torah, they have a connection one to another. In other words, b'shas miz hamatziv, for an ein by divrei Torah, when we're in a situation that there's no Torah, ein by mayim, there's no Torah, v'ed b'meila nechoshem akravim yesh by. So it's basically automatic. If there's no Torah, then there's going to be nechoshem akravim. Honestly, the talk came in mutzatz vision. There's no in between. You can't say, okay, I don't learn Torah, but I don't have shtuyot in my head. It's hainu das says as the chesar von ein by divrei Torah is nicht nur das was is pust von Torah und kann bleiben voll mit den Rishus. Nur in sein bar werden bederach memela nechoshem akravim zache was ein hepech malaket kedusha. So the Rebbe says it's automatic. If a person doesn't have mayim Torah, he has nechoshem akravim. There's no okay. There's three paths. There's the path of learning Torah. Then there's the path of just I'm neutral, and then there's the path of what's it called of shtusim. So the what he's saying is, the Rebbe is saying is that nechoshem akravim ein by. Thank you so much. What he's saying is that ein by divrei Torah, it's an automatic thing. If a person is not going to be filled with Torah, automatically he's going to have nechoshem akravim, which refer to the menagdim of kedusha. The Rabbi says like this. This is what the Baal Shem Tov says. The pasuk says v'sartem v'avadatem. Over there he's speaking about in Shema. So the Baal Shem Tov says kasher adam mafredes atzmim Hashem yisbarich. When a person is going to separate himself from Hashem, miyad hu eved avodah zarah, he's going to automatically serve avodah zarah. V'loy yesh davar ma'utza. There's no in between, which is very extreme. So what does that mean? V'sartem, and he's going to explain this. V'sartem, if a person is going to be mafred from Hashem, automatically, it's not like, okay, I'm taking a break from Hashem. No. It's besartem, automatically, it's going to be va'avadatem. You're going to serve avodah zarah. Der meat is mevur, varvos teida zok nit beferish as nechoshem akravim mishpei. That's why it's understood why the Torah does not say clearly that there was nechoshem akravim. Remember, lent us up, ateitzofen ein b'mayim, we're just learning it out from there. It says there's no water, it must be a nechoshem akravim. It's something which we don't have to specify. Nechoshem akravim yesh boi is b'derech memela teitzofen mayim ein boi. It's automatic. If a person doesn't have Torah, automatically he's going to have nechoshem akravim. It's like the Baal Shem Tov says, v'sartem, it's automatically going to be va'avadetem. When the fire bring their medrash, the tzvei pirushim in ein hemshech. That's why the medrash brings these two explanations as one continuation. Ein pirush is tali and musbar from tzveiten pirush. Each explanation is dependent on the other. Thus was nechoshem akravim yesh boi. This that a person has, nechoshem akravim, it's because a person doesn't have water, which means ein by divrei Torah, he does not have the words of Torah. Since a person does not have Torah, so what happens? You come to start doing something which is hepech Torah, which was to mechiras Yosef, Now, Zog the Rebbe in Gimel, the Chelik and Mefragin, you can ask like this. According to the Baal Shem Tov, who says, Visartem, automatically, you're going to vavadatem, wasret, wegen dem etzem verbund, und vekas von jedem Neberstern, which is speaking about the essential connection that a Yid has with Hashem, is moving, as we know, Visartem, bekert sich ab von des Dvekas von Neberstern, is a shein an inge von hepech vavadatem. The minute that a person goes ahead and starts veering off from the Dvekas of Hashem, automatically is The second that he starts veering off from Hashem, even a little bit, so you have automatically the vavadatem serving avodah zarah. However, in our case, what are we speaking about? We're speaking about that he doesn't have teda. So was the hechrich as we balses and talking teda must be from the teda. Why are you being so extreme in saying that if a person doesn't have teda, automatically he's going to go to the opposite? It's like,
in other words, Visatim is more extreme. Visatim, you're going to go away with Torah.
Right, so Visatim, you're doing something. You're actually doing Visatim, you're actually doing a pu'ula, you're going away, so I understand, okay, vavadatim. Here, what am I doing? It's like Shev Altaz. I'm not doing anything, I'm not learning, I'm not involved. I'm relaxing. Why do you have to go so extreme and say, no, you have Nechoshev Akrab? Euch type of thing you have to understand is you do as the Achi Yosef haben gehalten as Alpi Din is Yosef Mechuyim Misa. The brothers held that Alpi Aloche wasn't like a brother. They felt Alpi Aloche, the way Yosef is acting, his ideology is Mamish, she's Mechuyim Misa. On them Medik, as Yosef is Nuchol Snakish B'nafshana Misa. They felt that Yosef is trying to go and kill them. So now that he is he's mastering and he's trying to kill them, so he's a din of a reidif. Or the time, they felt, like the Mefarshim explain, if you look in Arachaim over there, it gives a whole adichas, why Yosef, the brothers felt, Api Halacha, Yosef is Mechuyim Misa. Hein, Farvazak the Medrash, as durch them was they haben, gewollt hagen in Yosef, is nesreuken Berish Yaakov, ein bei Divrei Torah. Was der Fuhren ist mashma, als die Schwatten haben sich as Vashom nicht gerechnet mit Divrei Torah. Beis, the daitem is given Alpi Din Torah. The question is like this: the Medrash is saying that that through them wanting to kill Yosef, the pit of Yaakov was empty, which means there's no Divrei Torah, which is mashma that they b'chal didn't hold of Torah, which in their minds, even though maybe Alpi Din they were wrong, or they were for sure wrong, but they felt that Yosef deserved to die. So in other words, you're not, the mashal of Visatim Vavatim is really not so similar here, because Visatim, you're actually doing a pull, you're doing something. Here, first of all, you're not really doing anything, you're just staying status quo. And number two is that they didn't have Teda. In their minds, they felt that he deserved to die. Gimel. Back to them Tam was Chazal vergleichen Teda zu Mayim. So first, we'll understand this by first prefacing, why does Chazal compare Torah to water? Torah is zugelichen, lekama dvarim, lelechem, v'yayim, v'shem. Torah is compared to various different aspects. You have sometimes the way Torah is compared to bread. You have Torah is compared to water, wine. You have Torah is compared to oil. Every single one of them expresses another part of what Torah is. You say, let's say, lechem, Torah, just like bread, satiates a person, Torah satiates a person. Wine, nichnas yain yatzasei, Torah brings out the say. Shemen, say especially in Chassidus, is mfafeh skulei. So Torah, when you want to bring out different parts of Torah, it's compared to different foods. Now, wegen dem Inyan von Mayim in Torah sagen Chazal. Now, in regards to water, Chazal say, and the Rebbe brings this down in Tanya, why is Torah compared to water? To tell you, just like water comes from a very high place and goes down to a very low place, so too Torah is only going to last by a person. Torah will affect a person. Torah will be remembered by a person only when he is humble. So it says, as mayim is nit a dugma of etzem Torah, which means that water is not an example of the essential part of Torah, nor if the bittul v'shilfus ha'adam was fadazich by learning. It's only telling us the person how he has to be humble, just like the idea of water. Water comes from a high place, and it kivyochel humbles itself to go to a low place. So to Torah will only be mekayim by somebody who's like the idea of water of being humble. Well, late them is for infant. Das was the Medrash Hanal sagt nisreiken beide shel Yankiv. Now we could understand. We can explain. The Medrash says that the pit of Yaakov was empty, and by Divrei Torah there was no water. Warum by Zeis given Torah the Dinei Torah. They had Torah and they had the halachos of Torah. Says now gefeldem in hamayim shebat Torah. They didn't have the water of Torah. But habarek, what are we saying? Ain't boy mayim. There's no water. Look, I'm on Sichos that we're going to explain later on. They didn't have that humility, that bittul. Moving for the kriyos, bittul ba'ad goshes, and tefillas hamida, like we see that when you have to bend by Shemon Esrei, as I say, there is kriya bebarach. First, the person bends by barach, v'zeike b'shem, and he stands up when he says Hashem's name. Aber, what's the din? The halacha says, hamelech, by a king, the Gemara says, kivin shekara, once since once a king bends, shuven zekev, he does not get up again. So
the mind is on the brother, not on Yosef.
yeah, the water is on the, exactly. Ein by mayim, which means, exactly, simple pshat is ein by mayim, you would think to Yosef, that Yosef, there's no water in Yosef's pit. But he's saying, ein by mayim, the brothers did not have that humility that water has. Like you see by a king, that Hamelech, once he bends, he doesn't get up. In other words, they didn't have that bittul. Okay, fine. So it's a very.
It doesn't show bittul. What's the word in Shuvin?
By a melech, I think the word is. So I think the word. So the din is like this. The Gemara in Bracha says is a regular person goes Baruch, Ata Hashem gets up. By a king, once the king has to have an extra bittul that he has to bend, and the whole Shemon Esrei doesn't get up. So the brothers, I guess pshat is that the brothers were at a state of a melech. They were, and they were lacking that ultimate bittul. Yes, they had Teda, and they had din Teda, but that bittul, that's what they were lacking, like the melech.
They had this like.
They had this.
They had the kriya.
I don't know if it's. He's trying to bring it. A melech has to have the simple pshat is a melech has to have a status higher in bittul. They didn't have that. The brothers didn't have it. Okay. So based on this, the above question now is stronger. We're explaining that the minute somebody does not have Teda, automatically he has Nechashim HaKravim. So dem alein was by limud felt blows that bittul v'shiftless. So by him the mitzvahs for Nechashim HaKravim amenaket sunya kedusha. Just because somebody doesn't have the bittul, fine. A person is learning Torah. Okay, so he's a balgaivanik. He thinks highly of himself or whatever. He gets to his head. But you're saying that automatically, if a person doesn't have the mayim, which we said is not Teda al Teda alein, but it's the bittul of Teda. So you're saying automatically that he has Nechashim HaKravim right there. It's a little bit extreme, very extreme. Okay, hey, they're beer and them, so the explanation is as that Ikur von Teda is as durch dem limud verbindt man sich mit neisen Teda. What's the idea of learning? Learning is that through learning a person connects with who? With the giver of the Teda. The neisen Teda. Und der Iber is the Tanai from Bittul b'shifus Tanai Ikur. So therefore, if the whole idea of Teda is that you're connecting with the neisen Teda, so if a person does not have that Bittul, it's a very big problem. It's a very essential condition in order to learn Teda, connecting with the neisen Teda. Calls man der Mensch is ametzias for sich. Calls man that a person feels his own existence. Is noch mugder in die Hagbolis von Anivra und der Fahr ist nicht mesugel zu verbinden sich mit Neisen Atera was is Greenwald. Calls man that a person thinks highly of himself, that he considers himself a metzias, so automatically he is limited to be. It's very technical. He is a nivra, which this nivra needs to connect with the Neisen Atera, which is a Greenwald. So technically he cannot connect with him. Dafka durch dem was der Lehmer steht in Atron von Bittul Batachas. Dafka, when the person who's learning is in a state of humility, he has was der mit geht arois von seinen Gdorim Agbal, so he goes out of his limitations. Kann sich verbinden mit Blig Wolf von dem Neisen HaTera, so he can connect Dafka with the Neisen HaTera. Damit wird euch verstandig der Hemshech in der Parkasha. Now we can understand in Shemon Esrei we ask at the end. We say, we say that let my soul be like dust to you, or like to everybody it should be dust. We ask that Hashem should open our hearts with Teda. Learning Torah, you have to have in a way of understanding. The person who just reads Gemara doesn't understand what he's saying. He's not Yetzah Limud Teda. Was is Shaykh when Zayin Seichel B'chlal Zayin Keicher Stein in a Metzias. So in order to understand, you have to be a kind of a Metzias because I need to understand what's going on. What does that mean? That my soul should be la kultia is shel umevatal zayin Metzias. So we're saying that my soul should be like dust to everybody. So how does that mean? Psach libi b'ser secha. Sorry, v'nafshi kafar lakol tia. I should be like dust. And psach libi b'ser secha. It doesn't work. If you're like dust, so that means you have to forget about yourself. If you forget about yourself, then you have to forget about your own havana v'asaga. So he says like this. Then can zayin psach libi b'ser secha. When could it be psach libi b'ser secha? When could you open my heart in your Torah shalacha, the Eibusher's Torah? When can zayin akli to Torah shechalish baruch versus building mikbalas? When could you be a vessel, a receptacle to the Eibusher's Torah, which is bli gvul dafke dan. And by iyim is freer the other bittul mikol v'kol. That's when you have the ultimate bittul, nit stam bittul, not you have a regular bittul, nor ka'afor lakol, was a kurl doshna love, your pasha bottle like everybody tramples on you. The bittul, verter muchsher to mekabel zayin to rasu shekalish baruch. Through a person's bittul, he becomes now susceptible to be a mekabel the Eibusher's Torah. Und danach kommt your gaita durch die Yigias Adam bekeach sichle. Then comes the toil with a person's head. Then a person could actually accept the Eibusher's Torah, understand the Eibusher's Torah in a way of psach libi b'ser secha. In other words, so v'nafshi kafar lakol tia is a prerequisite in psach libi b'ser secha. When could a person actually attain the level of psach libi b'ser secha? Is only if he has the level of nafshi kafar lakol tia. So there's a story that I heard once of Rabbi Ashkenazi al-Vashon, the Rebbe of Parchabad. The Rebbe told him once as a bacher, I think he had like a very hard time with chavrus. He was very like a genius, so he had a hard time with chavrusas. He couldn't, no one can keep up with him. So the Rebbe, I think, told him once that the Rebbe told him that if you want to be successful in psach libi b'ser secha, and the Rebbe told him it's v'nafshi kafar lakol tia. When you learn with somebody, when you accept from somebody, when you hear somebody out, then you could have the ultimate level of psach libi b'ser secha. Okay, so what we explained in Hay is that when the ikar of Torah is to connect with the Neis and Torah, and therefore a person needs to have real bittul and shiflus to connect with the Neis and Torah, because if a person is going to stay in a nivra, as a nivra, he will not be able to connect with the bli gvul. And now we can understand what does it mean v'nafshi kafar lakol tia b'sach libi b'ser secha. The is two opposite things. So, because when a person is in a state of a nafshi kafar lakol tia, then he can be zeicha to the ultimate level of psach libi b'ser secha. Okay, vav. The mit, it's a missile? Wow. Vav. Okay, the mit wird man euch verstehen, a davar tzomua, was gefindt bei limud atera. Behainu, as in Dibur von Torah, is the Amayla Lagabe Havadas HaTorah. Now, with this we can understand something which is very wondrous, which we find by Torah. We say is that in regards to in Dibur of Torah, there's a Amayla in regards to Havadas HaTorah. What does that mean like this? The din is like this. The din is, this halach in Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe brings down, Siv Mem Zayin, Siv Beis. The Alter Rebbe says, as a hamaharer b'divrei Torah, somebody who thinks the words of Torah, ein tzarich levarech birchas haTorah. If a person wakes up in the morning, washes negel vaser, but he does not say brachas, let's say, he doesn't say, the halach is, he's allowed to think divrei Torah, hamaharer b'divrei Torah, ein tzarich levarech, he doesn't have to actually make birchas haTorah. Why? The halach is, val hirer loy ki dibur dami, because thinking, it's not considered as speaking. Un kol ma Shloimy behirer, levad, anything, the halacha is that anything that a person learns just by contemplating about Torah, and the ef shalei lahoitzi b'svasav, he's able to actually articulate the words, ve'enim moitzi, and he does not, the halacha is, en yoyse b'limud zeh dechevosei mitzvahs ulematem oisim. The Alter Rebbe writes in Hilchos Talmud Torah, in Perek Beis, Sif Yud Beis, the Alter Rebbe writes that if a person has the ability, he's thinking Torah, and he has the ability to articulate these words, and he does not, the halacha is, he is not yoytze, the mitzvah of limud, of the Torah says, l'matam eisam, a person is not yoytze. Why? Because here, lav ki dibur dami, loy ki dibur dami. Noch mehr more. So the havana von Torah is verbunden mit dem dibur von Torah. To understand Torah is connected with actually dibur, with articulating. The Chazal zogin, if in pasuk, chayim heim lemoitzi'eim, and Chazal say over there, articulate lemoitzi'eim, lemoitzi'eim, bepeh. You have to say it with your mouth. On, arucha nitnar bepeh, nar, benamach evarim shacham shtameresh. It has to be with your 248 limbs. V'im lav, and if not, the halacha is Einem Mishtameres. If not, the Gemara says that it won't preserve. Right? So this is the second. This is what the Gemara says that. Right? It says that for they are your life for those who find them. And the Chazal say, don't learn to those who find them, but to those who express them. In other words, you have to express it with your mouth. Now it says if it's arranged not only in the mouth, but it has to be arranged not only in your mouth, but in your 248 Evonim. So it says if it's arranged in your 248 Evonim, then it's secure. If not, it will not be secure. So the Rebbe says the Vayeshev seemingly. Shas eine red divrei Torah von Torah Shebal Peh und versteht nicht was sagt. Halacha is that if a person speaks Torah Shebal Peh and he doesn't understand what he says, it's a psak in Shulchan Aruch as eine nechsher limud klal. When a person learns Torah Shebal Peh or says Torah Shebal Peh but doesn't understand what he's saying, so the halacha is Shulchan Aruch says ein nechsher limud klal. It's not considered b'chlal learning. Thus says as the inyan alimud by Torah Shebal Peh b'shteit in verstehen das was man lernt. So what's the idea of learning? By Torah Shebal Peh, you have to understand what you're saying. Hein for us is thereby azay negeh the dibur from Torah. So if a person has to understand what he's saying, so why is it so negeh that you should have dibur in Torah? You should have words in Torah. And not even more, it's so much as Abdos felt. You're saying if the dibur lacks in Torah, is loy dai was in tzarich levarich is nit yetzi chayvas mitzvahs so matam esim noich enem mishtameres. You're saying that not only is a person in tzarich levarich, and not only is it not yetzi the matam esim, but you know what? Enem mishtameres, the Torah will not be secure for you. I feel that avanas haTorah verpayin mit gehit, which means that even to retain his comprehensive of Torah, that's also not. He doesn't get that. And the question is, why not? So the Rebbe says like this: Zayin is the hasbara in them. The explanation is as follows: Kanal, that ikar von limud von Torah is der verbund was man hat durch Torah mit dem Nesen Torah. What's Torah? Torah is limud Torah means you're connecting with the Nesen Torah. When they're far muz euch der limud Torah Zayin in an eifin as the avana v'asaga von dem inyan is, and therefore when a person learns Torah, so the way he understands Torah has to be nit. Not only the way, not mitzad, the way Hashem created the nivra with a seichel. Okay, seichel means he has to understand. Nor vidas is mitzad HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It has to be mitzad Hashem, which is Torah. So his Torah, the Torah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, as movement, it's understood as is nit maspik the tnuah from bittul blaze al ta'akdam which is the Torah. So it's not enough only to have this tnuah of bittul as a prerequisite for the military nerd, they're learning alein muzanin aleifim from bittul. So in the beginning, we're saying that as a prerequisite to learn Torah, you have to have bittul. He says even more so, that the learning itself has to be in a way of bittul. On der riber muz der limud zayin aleifim from the meitzeiyim bepeh biz arucha b'nemachivarim. Therefore, the Torah has to be in a way of he has to express it with his mouth and even ordered in your 248 evarim, which means like this. Shas a yid learn Torah nor mit zayin keich v'seichel. When a yid learns Torah using his cognitive and intellectual faculties, the hechste milas from the mention, which is the highest milas of a person, weiter noch in zayin metzias, he's still remaining in his metzias als mensch und kann nicht koil zayin to das Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's not going to be able to actually absorb Hashem's Torah. Umikol shekem v'kal v'chemer von pila da'ayel bekupa d'machta, and this is like a kal v'chemer from the, like we say, the Gemara says the impossibility of an elephant going through the eye of a needle. You know, it's only could be done in a dream, but to imagine an elephant going in the eyes of the needle is impossible. Madach apil was chosher is amugbal. Madach a elephant, which an elephant it's large, but it's limited. When that's vegan, nevertheless, says kupa demachta is kleiner from him, since the eye of a needle is obviously smaller than the elephant. Is a ganzen abgefragt as soll kennen reingehen in the kupa demachta. So it's obviously so. It's not even a question that the elephant can go in the eye of the needle. Biz as meba Vayeshev nit afilu b'cholam, and therefore, like the Gemara says, they don't even show you this in a dream because it's not shaykh. Halachas kam v'kama. As Teda versus Farbudim mit HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So on the more so, Teda, which is connected with Hashem, which is Shashui HaMelech Batzmusei, which is the toy of Hashem, the Bligvul Amiti, which is the Bligvul, Ken sich doch avaden nit arayin wenn nit das wären in dem Seichel von an Adam, Mod the Migbal. So it's impossible for the Eibishter, which is unlimited, to enter and grasp in the intellect of a finite and limited person. Und the Riber is, and therefore, therefore the Torah is not secure. Sie kann nicht haben kein Kiyum bei ihm, wie steht in seinen Agbolas. It will not leave a lasting impression for him at all. Und wie die Gemara that sell dirt as Talmud Echad, as the Gemara says over there, that there was a student who would study quietly and forget his learning. However, when you connect the Torah in a way of with your mouth, he's learning in a way of with his mouth, or noch niedriger mit namachivorim, with all his 248 limbs, was his seine niedriger von Seichel, which are lower than Seichel, Milas Adam. Das heißt, die Limbs sind Eifen as jedem Malosei und nimmt durch seine alle namachivorim is mevatel zayin mitzias, which means that Torah, he learns Torah, it permeates all his 248 limbs and nullifies his existence. Dafke demot ken tirasi shal Kadosh Baruch Hu built in mugbelas by him niklat veren and apnimis tirasi mishtamesh. Dafke then could Torah, which is unlimited, can be absorbed inwardly in Torah and then secure him. Okay, let's do one more. Okay, we have time, or should we stop here? Should we stop? Okay, we'll stop here. We'll continue this tomorrow.